Okay, so Canopy Growth wants to find new investors south of the border. It has applied to list on the NYSE and hopes to list on the big board this month. We're joined by Bruce Linton, CEO. Bruce, thanks so much for coming on the show. That would be quite an achievement, listing a major marijuana company in America.
Well, listing any marijuana company on the New York Stock Exchange hasn't been done. And so, Andrew, I've been coming here, I guess, 3-4 years with, trying to be first at things. And we thought the New York Stock Exchange, U.S. listings generally are great. And New York has a certain cachet to be on the Wall Street Exchange.
Sure, it's going to give you more international profile as well. Yeah. You have in the past insisted I don't have U.S. operations. I think the implication being I don't want to be at any risk of getting offside with Washington, where it's still federally illegal. Can you update us on that?
Yeah, so since day one, we're trying to exit prohibition. So we only go where it's legal, which means we're in Canada. We were the first to ship to Germany, first to ship to Brazil, any place where it's federally legal. It's currently not federally legal in the U.S. And so we have no operations there. One of the other announcements we put out this morning was related to our greenhouses. And with that, we're looking at the ability to have access to buildings if and when it became legal. But we have no marijuana operations at all in the U.S.
We're kind of disappointed. We thought you would go for the stock symbol weed in New York. Why'd you go with something pretty muted like CGC?
Well, Andrew, of course we would go for weed to start, but this is a pretty prestigious neighborhood we're stepping into, and I'm hopeful that over time they'll get more comfortable with the idea of a ticker called weed. But CGC for the New York Stock Exchange and weed up on the TSX is kind of where we landed, because when you approach the New York Stock Exchange and say, "Could we please be your first marijuana company ever listed?" This is a process, and we ended up with the right answer. And you keep certain things for future days. You don't want to spend all your time trying to get the ticker across necessarily.
No, I mean, you pick your battles. I'm sure it wasn't a battle as such, but New York said, we're just not happy with weed at this stage.
Well, I think it's a bit more complicated than that, but CGC was one of those things. That was our ticker until we picked up weed on the TSX. And so now we kind of, I think, pick up a little traction on both of them.
Now, it's pretty clear that MedReleaf was being shopped. They've agreed to a deal with Aurora. Had you considered taking a run at MedReleaf?
Well, if you think about it, we announced this morning that for about $375 million, we're buying effectively a 1 million square foot licensed greenhouse. And so that seems like a better deal. I don't think that we're in the interest of buying anything that's a licensed producer in Canada. A couple of things, really. It's the valuations for us to acquire are relatively higher than the assets we think we'd be getting. And frankly, when we buy them, because we've been building the most and have probably some high multiple of production of everybody, if I buy somebody else's assets, I have to rip out half of it and put it in so that it's to our standard. And so now it's just easier for us to actually license things. We started December 1 on 3 million square feet of greenhouse, and we had the first half of it under license by Feb 17th. And so I don't think we're buyers in these markets, and people like us just to execute, and we will.
Yeah, I think you've told us before you weren't interested in buying enough more production. And I think you referred there to that deal. You're buying out the remaining 33% stake in BC Tweed for about, stock, $374 million worth of stock.
Yeah, and to me, that's a good deal. Like some of these deals that I'm seeing out there, it kind of proves that you can actually spend $1 to buy a dime, and I'm not really in that game.
So tell us, what would you buy? What kind of I know you've got your finger in so many pies and internationally. What if you wouldn't be interested in buying more production capacity? What would you buy?
Well, so in Canada, I have enough production capacity to do everything we need to do for the foreseeable future. What we're now looking at is other countries that are federally becoming legal for medical, and acquiring greenhouse assets in those jurisdictions. We're also looking at a number of technologies that enable us to actually continue to differentiate the products, because everybody wants to talk about how a brand is important, which is true, but a brand attached to a Me Too product isn't important. And so we're spending a lot of time and money making differentiated products, and sometimes that might lead to an acquisition of a technology component.
Now, can you give us, Bruce, I know it's a moving target, but can you give us any kind of an idea, if all your expansion and acquisition plans come through, what kind of capacity in tons will you be looking at every year?
Yeah, so we're licensed at all of the locations in BC, and they're expanding licensed. So effectively, we either licensed or nearly licensed, we have about 6 million square feet, and about 70% of that is a greenhouse or greenhouses. And so typically, I think, people can put out funny numbers, but we don't have futuristic license capacity or output. We probably have current period license output that could supply at least 40% of the anticipated rec market and keep us at 30+% of the medical. So that's, several 100,000 kilograms. But part of the reason I'm on your show is we don't spend a lot of time putting out press releases with fake numbers. We just build buildings and get product out. Like in Q4, calendar Q4, I think we produced more cannabis by a couple thousand kilograms than most of the companies in the sector had produced in their operating history. And so I think we're just going to keep our number as it's a big number, and we're not worried about delivering on our market share.
Bruce, on that note, thanks for giving us the time today, and safe home. I know you're in Boston today. Bruce Linton, CEO of Canopy Growth.